right, well, good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Charlotte, and I have many fears. My very existence requires actions, activities, and choices which cause my heart to race, my face to flush, my lungs to fail me, and my stomach to tighten, my fight or flight instinct to continuously engage, and my mind to feel the pulsing pressure of blood flowing around my brain. I recounted one of these experiences not long ago on this very stage as a featured speaker, but that story's not for tonight. And this very moment actually has my heart beating ever faster and my breath difficult to catch. As with my last story delivered in this venue, I will be mostly bound to my emotional support phone, but I will look up to engage everyone as often as my fear allows. Peter McWilliams said of fear, to overcome fear, here's all you have to realize. The fear is there, and do the action you fear anyway. And Ralph Waldo Emerson said it more succinctly in, do the thing you fear and the death of fear is certain. But neither of these are true nor good ideas for some fears. There are times, actions, and activities where fear should not be conquered, where it keeps us from harm through our own idiocy. In my life, I have a series of poorly considered actions which could and should have resulted in my death. And I mark these actions with ravens as reminders. I have two debilitating fears, snakes and heights. One I always intelligently avoided, and one on more than a couple of the raven occasions, I almost died from stupid actions associated with heights. I knew this cute girl once, and I wanted to date her. I wanted to impress her. And she admired her paratrooper brother. And you can kind of see where this might be headed. I put myself into a position to end up in Army jump school. My pursuit of this girl had me arriving at the 1st Battalion, 507th Infantry Training Center, Fort Benning, Columbus, Georgia, in the suffocating heat of July 1989. Standing before those 250-foot towers I had, to that point, only seen in pictures, let me know immediately I'd made a mistake. And although those towers were still 2 weeks away from me, I was watching the second-week students there as they got bound in their harness, their chutes snapped into the rings, and they zipped up 250 feet on that rope, held breathlessly for a moment, and released. I started to question the cuteness level of that girl. But unfortunately, this is not a situation we can say, well, never mind. They don't allow it. So I'll move quickly through some details to the jump that hit me the hardest during my service. I made it past those towers, and jump week was hard. 2 of the required 5 jumps were especially horrifying. When I first jumped, I saw 2 candidates tangle together and spiral to the ground, successfully popping the one reserve for 2 of them at the very last moment and avoided death. But they crushed their bodies and they each ended up with permanent paralyzation. So each subsequent jump became more terrifying. On my last and 5th jump, I saw a stupid mistake that I did, rip my chin open. It should have actually ripped my head off, but the helmet was all open, tore apart. And again, each subsequent jump became more terrifying. Those first 5 jumps were from fixed-wing aircraft, but most of my remaining, increasingly fear-inducing 22 jumps were done with rotary-wing aircraft, the worst of which was the UH-1 Huey. The Huey has this unforgiving metal strut that extends just past the door. And what you have to do is, from a seated position, legs dangling in the wind, hands grasping the cold floor for dear life, you've got to, when your turn comes, thrust yourself up, over, and out over that strut. And I weighed about 114 pounds. It's always funny to give the smallest paratrooper 75 pounds of radio gear. Between that, a shield, reserve, a weapon, and other things in my pack, I clocked in about 245. I could never lift myself. I always knew I would fail to push myself far enough over, my butt would catch the strut, and I would tip forward and feel like I was going to swan dive to the rapidly approaching earth. And then on one moonless, cold and completely dark night over Fort Stewart, hooked up into a Huey, and holding on for dear life, I felt certain my heart was going to burst, kind of like I feel right now. The dim red lights inside the craft, the thump, thump, thump of the rotors, the yelled conversations of those around me, the cold air blowing in my face, the feel of the metal I was grasping, the taste of a meal I wish I had skipped, all filled my senses as we approached the drop zone. I was certain I would not jump into that abyss, and I almost didn't. Apparently my fear caused me to not feel the initial slap on my helmet, the subsequent slap to my back, or truly even the push. All I knew is that suddenly I was face down, butt hitting the strut, seeing only darkness. And I forgot to mention my night vision sucks. So it's a pitch black night, no light, moonless, I can't see. My chute did pop and I straightened up. I could hear the wind, but I couldn't see or identify any kind of drop zone. My mind flashed back to a similar jump at Fort Stewart earlier, where the drop was early, and as I steered toward the landing zone, which I could see that night, I could hear the snapping of tall, painful Georgia pines, as those heavier SOBs that gave me the radio didn't make it to the drop zone. I had a longer hang time, I was able to make it. But tonight, I couldn't see anything. I wasn't sure if I was going in the right direction. So when the ground hit me, it was an unwelcome surprise. It was hard, and it was the worst landing of all my jumps. I walked away, but unlike all the other jumps, that fear was still thumping in my heart. When I approached the rally point, something suddenly knocked the hell out of me from behind, practically put me on my ass, and that something turned out to be the jump master from the bird I just got out of, screaming at me that if I ever froze in his aircraft again, it would be my last jump. But I went ahead and made that decision for him because 27 jumps were enough for me.